So, Mr. Dennison, do you have any objection to him moving in as an expert?
No.
All right, then I will move him in as an expert in statistical and forensic analysis of social media. Okay? Yes, sir, your question.
Mr. Schnell, what were you asked to do in this matter?
So I was asked to do several things. I used the official Twitter APIs to bring in data over several different time spans. Initially, it was April of 2020 to January of 2021, and analyzed various hashtags and things like that.
And what is significant about April 2020?
I understand that April 2020 is related to the alleged defamatory statements by Mr. Waldman.
And you talked about APIs. What does that mean?
So API stands for Application Programming Interface. That is a service that's provided by companies like Twitter so that professionals can write programs to query Twitter to ask for various things. In this case, I use two of their APIs. One of them is called the Search API, and that allows you to give search terms, and it will return all the tweets containing those search terms through a certain date range. The other one is called Accounts API, and I use that, again, through a certain date range to return any tweet that contained that hashtag. And I should add that it may not be obvious why you need to do this, but if you just do a search on Twitter itself, it's not going to return everything. It's going to return a subset of what is out there. But using these APIs, which you pay a lot of money for, they sort of guarantee that you'll almost guarantee that you'll get everything.
And you mentioned hashtags. I know a lot of people know what those are, but for those who don't, what's a hashtag?
Well, hashtags are a function of Twitter. They're really just part of the text of a tweet or a profile, and it's convenient to put things in hashtags so that when somebody searches, they can search for a particular hashtag and it'll come up.
And did you choose particular hashtags to search for?
I did.
And how did you choose which hashtags to use?
Well, initially I was looking at tweets that would be negative towards Ms. Heard. So I looked through tweets that were negative towards Ms. Heard, and I found that a super majority of them were using one of four different hashtags.
And so overall, what did your analysis find regarding negative hashtags about Ms. Heard from April 2020 until the end of January 2021?
Well, there were over 1,243,000 and change uses of those hashtags during that time frame you just mentioned.
And did you perform an analysis of the negative hashtags from April 2020 until January 2022?
Yes, I did.
And what was the result of that?
There were over another million, so 2.38 million, I think.
And how did you determine that the tweets were negative about Ms. Heard?
Well, I hadn't been asked that until later on in this, but I didn't think that that would be in controversy. I mean, some of these hashtags are pretty rude, and it would really surprise me that anyone would think that they wouldn't be negative towards Ms. Heard. But when I was asked about it later, I actually took a random sampling and looked at them and could not find any that were not negative towards Ms. Heard.
And what was the random sampling that you used?
I did two of them. They were 1,000 each.
And how did you determine which 1,000 tweets to use to review in each search?
I wrote a program that truly selected them at random.
And in your experience, is 2,000 tweets a meaningful sample?
If they're chosen at random in this universe, yes.
Okay. In addition to the four hashtags for Ms. Heard, did you review any other? Did you look at any other hashtags?
I did.
And what type of hashtags did you look for?
I looked at what I found to be 6 hashtags that would be negative towards Mr. Depp.
Okay, but Michelle, could you put up demonstrative 1, which is on the 5th page of attachment 4 of Mr. Schnell's expert designation. Mr. Schnell, did you create this chart?
I did.
And what data is this chart based on?
This is based on the search API from Twitter, and it rolls up the number of tweets with the various hashtags by month of these 2 years. 3 years.
Your Honor, I'd like to I'd make this a demonstrative Schnell demonstrative 1, or do you want it to be a?
If I could get it one of the numbers, since it's going to be part of the record, just.
Okay. Can we call it Schnell demonstrative 1, and then I will give you a number?
Well, the last number I have is 1837. I don't know.
Do we know if that's the last?
Can
Can we make it? Can we? How about we make it 1900? That way, it's not. Can we just make it 1900?
That's perfect.
Okay.
All right, 1900 it is. Any objections to demonstrative?
No, Your Honor.
All right, you can publish that.
And is this the chart you made, Mr. Schnell?
It is.
Okay. And at the top here, there are hashtags that are in yellow. You see that?
I do.
Okay. And if we go all the way to the right, well, first let's scroll over to the left here. I apologize. You see, in 2020, there's the months of June and July.
I do.
Okay. And what are these columns? First, tell the jury what they represent.
So each of these is the number of tweets with the hashtags, with the corresponding hashtag during that month.
Okay. And if we look at the first one in yellow, you see that first hashtag, the fourth one over?
I do.
And are there any, what does it show from 2018 to July of 2020?
There were none.
And then what happens in August of 2020?
Well, there's a remarkable jump from July to August of 2020. It goes from 0 to 13,878.
And if we scroll to the right, the last three hashtags, which are highlighted, or shows the difference between June and July. What did your analysis show?
Well, you can see that June is about at its steady state. In July, there's also a remarkable jump.
And that's for all three of those hashtags?
That's correct.
Okay. And the hashtags, if the hashtags that are in blue are the ones related to Mr. Depp, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Oh, by the way, what is your understanding of when the last alleged defamatory statement was made by Mr. Depp through Mr. Waldman?
My understanding is that it was the end of June of that year.
Of 2020?
Yes.
Now, looking at the hashtags that are highlighted in blue for Mr. Depp, for the months of November and December of 2018 and January of 2019, what does your analysis show?
Well, I see a remarkable jump in November of 2018, and then it starts to, well, it goes way down in December of 18 and January of 19.
Okay. And do you know when Ms. Heard wrote the op-ed in this matter?
My understanding is that it was December of 2018.
Okay. And if we go to November of 2020 for the hashtags related to Mr. Depp, if you see the difference between October of 2020 and November of 2020, what do you see there?
I also see a large jump from October to November of 2020.
Okay. And if we look at the last hashtag in blue that says Johnny Depp is a wife beater, what does that show what did your analysis find in terms of tweets with those hashtags?
It looks to me that also, I mean, there are none prior to, well, little here and there. There are single-digit ones, but prior to November of 2020, there are basically none, and then it jumps up to over 2,000.
And do you know what happened in November of 2020?
My understanding is that's when the UK trial ended.
Okay. We can take this down. And can you put up demonstrative 2, which will make 1901, which will identify as 1901.
That's fine, 1901. Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, 1901 can be published.
And Mr. Banya, what data is this chart based on? Oh, I did the same thing. Mr. Schnell, what data is this chart based on?
This chart is actually based on the data we just looked at, but out until January of 2022. And it's just another way of displaying the numbers in graphical form so that we can see peaks and valleys.
And what are the dotted lines?
So if you look at the top, you can see that the dashed lines are the negative hashtags towards Ms. Heard, and the solid ones are the negative hashtags towards Mr. Depp.
And what is being shown here? In your analysis, what is shown with the tweets related to Ms. Heard?
Well, you can see that there's a huge spike in February of 2020, which I believe Mr. Waldman just testified that that's when he leaked an audio tape of some kind. There's also a notable, remarkable spike in July of 2020, in November of 2020, and then in March of 2021.
And the spike in February 2020, that came before the alleged defamatory statements, correct?
Which one?
The spike in February 2020.
That is correct.
And even though that spike came in before the alleged defamatory statements, even taking account for that spike, what time period has more negative tweets about Ms. Heard, before or after April 2020?
Right. So even taking into account this really large spike in February of 2020, and you look at from the beginning of 2018 until the beginning of 2022, there are a majority of the negative tweets are between April of 2020 through the beginning of 2022.
And do you recall at your deposition being asked that a spike in negative hashtags occurring before April 8th, right before April 8th, 2020?
Objection, hearsay.
I would ask about his attorney.
Overruled, go ahead.
I remember questions regarding particular dates, yes.
And what's your understanding as to why there was more negative tweets in April 6th and April 7th than April 8th, 2020?
Objection, no foundation.
Was there more negative tweets on April 6th and April 7th than in April 8th, 2020 as it relates to Ms. Heard?
Right. If you look at the day-by-day counts, which I supplied to Mr. Depp, you can see that there's a spike that begins on April 6th and goes for a few days. So April 6th is, to my understanding, before what people are calling the alleged defamatory statement.
And did you look at the tweets for April 6th and April 7th?
I did.
And what did you find?
I found that there are Waldman statements that are the same as on the 8th, on the 6th, and the 7th. The Daily Mail on the 6th and Vanity Fair on the 7th.
And what terms were being used?
Well, hoax is certainly used in each of them. I think abuse hoax is used in one of them. I don't have it in front of me, but generally speaking, in the 7th, I think it's the same exact terms that are used in the one on the 8th, but the 6th may be slightly different, but it has the word hoax.
Okay. If we can go to the second page of this demonstrative. What's being shown in the second page of this demonstrative?
So this is it's the same data as the first one, but I've removed one hashtag, the Justice for Johnny Depp hashtag, because it kind of overwhelms all the others because there are so many of them. And by removing it, it sort of rescales the graph and you can see the others much better. And even though they looked really tiny in the previous page, you can see that they're big numbers, over 100,000 and stuff. So this shows, and if you look between the two, you can see that the curves are the same. So it shows like a mathematical correlation between all the hashtags.
So what do you mean by mathematical correlation?
Well, they're correlated. You can see the numbers go up and down at the same place.
So So I'm understanding the hashtags are essentially all going up and down at the same times?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. And can we put up demonstrative exhibit 3?
Which will make 1902.
1902.
That's
Yes,
fine.
thank you.
All right, any objection to 1902?
No, this is demonstrative.
Yes, okay. You can publish that.
Mr. Schnell, did you create this chart?
I did.
And what does this chart show?
So what I did was I took the data that I supplied to Mr. Depp, which was the original data from April of 2020 through January of 2021, and I searched it for certain key terms, specifically hoax, fake, and fraud. And that's what it's representing. The top part, anyway.
And the top part, if you look at for hoax, fake, and fraud and this is within the negative hashtags or it's misheard?
Right. This is only searching through the ones that have one of these 4 hashtags in them.
Okay. And if you look at the total, oops, I'm putting that in black. Let's clear that. Oh, you saw the line there. What's the total number of times it was used in the negative tweets, either hoax, fake, or fraud?
81,121.
And did you perform any other searches on the data?
Yes.
And what searches did you perform?
So I also looked in that same data for references to Waldman by itself, or Wald, and then followed by anything followed by Mignon or Minion, depending how you want to pronounce it, sort of a portmanteau of Waldman and filet mignon, I guess, or Minions, and looked for those in the same data.
And in terms of the percentage of the amount of times Waldman or Waldmignon was used in the negative hashtags from April 2020 through, is it January 2021?
The percent?
Yeah, what's the percentage?
Yeah, so I found over 25% of the negative hashtag tweets, or 1 out of every 4 on average, had either Waldman or Waldmignon.
And I see you ran searches for hoax, fake, fraud, rather than abuse hoax in quotes or sexual violence hoax in quotes. Why didn't you run those searches?
Objection, compound.
Overruled.
So so if I had put them in quotes like that, say abuse hoax in quotes, that would require that it show up in exactly that way, with the same spacing and the same order. So if it said something like there was abuse and there was a hoax, it wouldn't get caught. So if I take the quotes out and search for them separately, search for things separately, that'll cover it and make sure that I catch everything.
And based on your analysis of these searches within the negative hashtags, what do the results of these searches mean?
Well, obviously I can't read what's in people's minds, but when I read the disclosure of Mr. Depp's expert, Mr. Banya, he stated that if these terms, in particular the Waldman term,
Objection, hearsay.
He's an expert.
No, overruled.
if these terms had shown up a lot of times in the negative hashtag tweets, then that could show that they were, paraphrasing the impetus of why people tweeted these. So I sort of adopted Mr. Banya's opinion on that and found this large number. So I agree with Mr. Depp's expert that this could show a substantial correlation.
And to what level of confidence do you hold the opinions you just provided to the jury?
To a reasonable degree of scientific certainty.
Thank you, Mr. Schnell. I have no further questions.
All right, cross-examination.